I'd like to welcome you to this symposium. And this topic of from suffering to flourishing is very close to my heart. If I can boast of one thing in my life, that is, I have suffered more than most people, yet by God's grace, I'm able to survive and flourish. I think that many in this room or taking part in this symposium can relate to that same. In public psychology, suffering is still a taboo word. You look at public psychology textbooks, most textbooks do not have a chapter on the public psychology of suffering. So today I invite you to consider that in order to experience true joy, in order to achieve sustainable flourishing, we need to go through the gates of suffering. Okay? In the next slide, I want to show you why suffering is not only inevitable, but also essential for suffering. So roughly, sources of suffering can be put into a 2x2 contingency table. Some sufferings are internal, if from within ourselves. Some are external, come from outside. Now this controllable and uncontrollable is more fuzzy. It is not a clear-cut thing. For example, negative emotions and thoughts often come from our unconscious mind. So often they erupt into our life and derail us or affecting our behavior. But what is in the unconsciousness is, in a way, is beyond our control, but they are also controllable. We are able to bring them to the conscious level, and that may require professional help. So you can see that often we suffer from our own bad decisions. We make bad choices. We do illegal or unethical things. Sooner or later, we will reap the fruit of our own sowing. Our unrealistic expectations of happiness and success can also cause us suffering, because when reality often is very harsh, we do not always get what we expected. A bad habit, like procrastination, or perfectionistic attitude can also cause immense suffering, preventing us from doing the things we need to do and get us anxious. And character defect is another matter. Overthinking, think about what might go wrong, what might happen, think about the bad things. So that's why if all those things are not properly managed, they are going to make us miserable. It doesn't matter how hard we try to be happy or to be successful. I have so many clients who desperately want to be happy. And I see so many friends who are famous positive psychologists. They know in their head how to be happy. But if this, all of this stuff are not handled properly, they can never be truly happy. And although there are other things that are uncontrollable, like the aging process, we all get old. We'll talk about, you'll learn a lot about in this conference that from the moment we are born until we die, the many things are beyond our control. Losses, separations, sickness, and abuse and childhood adverse experience, especially experience of abandonment, experiences of being abused by parents or other adults. All these things can cause us misery. External things, pandemic, toxic people, toxic workplace, and dangers, and uncontrollable things like natural disasters, war, discrimination, the pandemic, bad government, economical recession, social injustice. So we are in front of us where to cope with so many kinds of suffering. That's why Buddhists believe that life is suffering. So is Christianity. And existential psychologists also recognize that life is full of suffering. It's just a human condition. But the good news that we can transform suffering and turn it into flourishing. Okay? I can hear some suggestions. There are 5 steps or 5 stages, whatever we call it. There's a process involved. The first stage is to face suffering and learn how to embrace it as our forgotten twin, the other undesirable part of ourselves. Now, research has shown that the more we try to avoid suffering, the more we suffer. Paradoxically, the moment we face suffering, we take our stand and face it with a defiant spirit, face it with courage, then the monster will retreat. So that is an empirical fact. Okay, there's a lot of research supporting that. The second step is also supported by a lot of research. That is, when we suffer, we've tried to find out what is suffering, what does it mean? And Frankl used to say that suffering is bearable if there's meaning. Some is unbearable if it has no meaning. So we have a capacity to understand what does this suffering tell me? What's the message it has? And more importantly, what's the lesson I can learn from this painful experience? So you'll be able to extract, wrestle out some meaning, some lesson, or some wisdom. Then your suffering becomes not only bearable, but also your welcome master, your welcome teacher, because it teaches you some precious lesson that you can never learn without that painful experience. The third thing is even more important. If you are able to harness all the negative energy and insight from suffering and channel it to fertilize the dark soil for your personal growth. Wow, that's amazing. You know what? I can honestly say that every rejection, every insult, every put down make me stronger, make me all determined not to be defeated. I'm still walking tall. I'm still full of energy and vitality, thanks to all my enemies. They try to destroy me, but unwittingly, they make me strong. So therefore, you probably have the same experience. You can also become stronger and better because you're suffering. The first point I want to make is that because suffering is inevitable, that makes us aspire of hope to transcend our small self, to connect with something greater, to connect with God, to connect with other people, to connect with something that was dying for. So by finding there's something greater, by finding a higher purpose, a greater good, then we not only become stronger, but we find ourselves disappear in the ocean. We discover that we're part of the vast ocean. So at that point, we have succeeded in transforming suffering. And what's the proof? The proof is that if you're able to transcend suffering, you'll be able to be what you are meant to be. You're able to fulfill your calling, your purpose, and produce the unique fruit to feed others that only you can give. So this is something for you to think about why going to the gates of suffering is essential, not only inevitable, but essential for your flourishing. And here is a picture that I favor. This picture, this image, represents the self-transcendence model developed by Franco and expanded by me by incorporating ideas from Taoism, from Carl Jung. So basically, when we stick our roots into suffering, when we try to reduce our world suffering, it forces us to cry out to God and to reach the highest ideal. It also forces us to seek help from other people to serve the common good. So as a result, we're able to produce fruits. And his self-transcendence can reduce suffering in several ways. Losing oneself in emotion of awe, losing oneself in serving others, losing ourselves in worshiping God, losing ourselves in nature, losing ourselves in striving toward a higher purpose, losing ourselves in developing a pro-social and altruistic character. So our panelists will discuss aspects of self-transcendence. So I hope that we can all benefit from this symposium.